Mexico, a land rich in culture, a land of diversity, possessing a vast array of indigenous people groups, speaking over 200 distinct language variations. With a population quickly approaching 100 million people, Mexico is a land with a growing need. This need is not restricted only to the poor, or to the cities, or the hungry, or the old. It is a need that has been satisfied in only 7% of the Mexican population. It is the need to know that Jesus Christ is the source of their salvation. Over 90% of the Mexican people seek to meet this need by bearing an immense load of empty traditions and rituals learned through generations of traditional religion. Still others reject the fact that God exists altogether. Mexico, a land with close to 90 million souls on their way to a Christless eternity. But God has a plan to reach the people of Mexico. Evidence of this plan is seen in the numbers of churches springing up throughout the land. It is seen in organizations like Mexican Mission Ministries, who have come to see the realization of a dream that began in 1954 when Walter Gomez and others who joined him hoped to see the Mexican nationals trained to reach their own people and to start churches in their own communities. As these churches have multiplied and grown, they have teamed up in partnership to see this dream continued. A wonderful example of this growth was seen in León, Guanajuato, when Brother Cipriano Aguirre was sent to plant a church. Brother Cipriano arrived in 1986 and began immediately by evangelizing in public parks. God blessed his efforts, people came to know the Lord, and a church began to grow.
Nunca nadie me había enseñado que Cristo había muerto por mí en una cruz.
I had been taught about Christ, but never knew he had died to be my Savior. I came to know the Lord when my neighbor, who had been saved through Brother Cipriano, spoke to me about knowing God. It was then that I accepted Jesus Christ as my Savior.
Mi esposa iba a los cultos a escondidas de mí porque
my wife used to sneak her way to the meetings because she was afraid of me. I grew up in a strict Catholic home. One day I arrived home to find Brother Cipriano having a Bible study there. It made me so mad to see him. It was not until a few years later that I decided to go to church. I sat there as a judge. I could not understand why people would cry when someone got saved. God had to push me to the end of myself. One Sunday evening at church, I raised my hand to show that I wanted to receive Christ as my Savior. You would have thought someone had scored a touchdown the way everyone cheered. One day when I was riding with my father on the way home from work, I told him what I had done. He became so angry that he pulled the car over right there and pushed me out. Since then, we have not had much contact with my family, but continue to enjoy a growing relationship with Christ.
Hace 8 años yo caí en depresión y pues
there was a time when I was very depressed. All I did was lie around in bed. The doctors did not know how to help me. I went to Mass. Sometimes I would sit through 3 Masses, hoping to find help for my soul, but the load I felt never left. One day, 2 young ladies who came with a group to help Brother Cipriano came by my house. They told me about Jesus Christ, and right there I prayed to accept him as my Savior. Since then, I have had no depression, and my family has come to know the Lord too.
As these testimonies demonstrate, God worked through Brother Cipriano to reach people in a community where many do not know that Christ is their Savior. As the church in León grew, meetings were held in the pastor's home. Soon it grew to be too crowded, and the need for a larger meeting area became evident. Members of the church began construction on a new building where meetings are currently being held in the unfinished basement. Once finished, the building should hold about 200 people. It is amazing to see how God has reached whole households in the city of León. Members of the church continue to enjoy rich relationships with each other and with Jesus Christ as they worship and learn together. Daniel, Margarita, and Piedad continue to grow in the Lord along with their families and friends. But none of this would have taken place if it were not for the willingness of Brother Cipriano to leave the familiar and step out on faith that God would use him. If it were not for the partnership of churches who shared the dream to see new churches planted in new communities. And none of this would have been possible if it were not for Walter Gomez and Mexican Mission Ministries, who God blessed with the vision of his plan to evangelize the lost in Mexico. As it said in Ezekiel 22:30, "And I looked for a man who would stand in the gap for me on behalf of the earth." God continues to look for men like Walter Gomez and Cipriano Aguirre. He continues to watch for women like the two young ladies who witnessed to Piedad Rojo. He continues to search for men and women like the many who began to give of themselves through prayer and financial support long before any of these events took place. Are you one of these people that God is seeking? Are you willing to stand in the gap before Him on behalf of the earth? Stand in the gap with Mexican Mission Ministries as they continue God's work in Mexico. Join them as they partnership with Mexican nationals to plant new churches and reach the land of Mexico for Christ. This is a Mexican success story. Make it happen again.